Here we are, and good morning
Analog,
to Analog. Yes,
analog note taking.
right. Good morning to everybody watching us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and listening to us in Clubhouse. It's a pleasure to have you with us here and introduce again our special guest of today, Michael Thuresson, or how, as everybody knows him, this is Mike Thuresson. Probably you have already met Mike on LinkedIn or other online platforms, and you have read his book, The Salaryman, here in Japan. We have already had Michael a couple of times before, last year. It happened, and when we talked about Salaryman, Senryu, and the book, he published. Once again, it is The Salaryman. I read it late last year and I had a lot of fun actually reading the stories there. So, Mike, it was really wonderful of you to share your stories and the experiences in Japan with all the quirks and everything there. And today we're going to talk once again about self-publishing here in this beautiful country. We know that it's not easy and it takes time, it takes persistence. So Michael is going to tell us more about self-publishing and how things have changed, if at all, since we had the first podcast about this. But before that, of course, I would like to say thank you to our first wonderful sponsor. This is Kanchu. Kanchu is available online, of course, and you can connect with them via James Howell by connecting with James on LinkedIn or sending him an email at james@kanchu.com. You already know probably that Kanchu offers bilingual services in buying and selling real estate in Yokohama. They also do real estate investment and property management. So if you have any projects about in these fields, please think of James Howell, and connect with him. You will also find his contact details in the YouTube description, the description
Yeah,
of this video on YouTube. We have worked with them, and that's why we're happy to be able to have the privilege to.
I recommend you follow James on LinkedIn because you'll get to know him better. His posts are great, they're really interesting, and he's very approachable. Just a really good guy, and these guys will help you out. So
Yes, very much so. And now we're back once again to the topic of today's podcast with Mike. Well, self-publishing in Japan.
Hi,
Good
good
morning, Mike.
morning. Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Thanks for reading my book. Always nice.
It's
And
a pleasure.
I understand you read it in paperback format too.
I did, yes. It
So
was
that
great. I loved the feel, of the pages. After finishing school, I'm very much into paper books again because I love to feel the book in my hands and also the feel of the paper. And your book is amazing because, of course, it's not only the stories which I love, and I could relate to many of them actually.
yeah,
It was like a catharsis to me, after so many years here in Japan. But also the book itself feels really good in my hands. So I keep it actually very easily accessible here at home. So sometimes I go back to the stories because I need something to laugh and
yeah.
go through again. Yeah. But thank you for writing it and publishing it. And so you published it, right, Mike?
yes. I think some of you might have been at one of the earlier meetings that we had on this. I did introduce how to self-publish in Japan, and I did that. I published the first edition of the Salaryman book in 2019, which was a different world, and no AI really to speak of, and
Mm.
publishing a book yourself was very tedious at times, and I'll talk about it in a little bit how it's a lot easier now to take your stories and put them on paper and distribute them via paperback all over the world.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that nowadays, at least to my uneducated self, it looks like distributing paperback books around the world is not an easy task at all when you self-publish. So I wonder how difficult it is, what it involves, and maybe we'll get into this later or now.
I can give a little background because I wasn't going to cover too much of what we did last time, but I think I was talking about last time, really in Japan, the only game in town for print on demand, which is what you call self-publishing. It's
Right.
basically you upload a book and then somebody can buy one copy and there's no inventory, and Amazon ships it to their doorstep the next day in any country that there's an Amazon
beautiful.
website.
I love it.
Yeah, that is print on demand. And that's relatively new, but it's been around for a good 10 years at least. And Amazon was the first to really do it at scale globally. And in Japan, though, it's still pretty much only Amazon doing that as far as print on demand for authors and books. There's a few here and there, like I think domestic manga websites that let you make some kind of, fan manga and deliver it to your door or deliver it to somebody else's door. But it's nothing that's like on the radar of most people. So Amazon is pretty much it in Japan. But again, this blew my father's mind 6 years ago when I did the Salaryman book. He's like, he couldn't believe he could get a book written by somebody in Japan delivered to his doorstep in Chicago on paperback within 2 days. I
still don't believe it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So that, it still hasn't been it hasn't reached the mainstream understanding quite yet.
I wouldn't have known had I not spoken to you.
Yeah. It's really, I think most people think, ebooks, that makes sense. Like, an ebook, that's easy to distribute, right? There's no physical part of it.
Right.
And that's easily distributable anywhere, but paperback, it's like, I'm not Stephen King or, some mainstream author, it's just the everyman and every woman who can do that. So I'd love to see more foreigners here. There's a lot of stories and there's a lot of businesses that are interesting. I'd love to hear people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn tell their business story, or if they're an expert in some field, and that's why I follow them in Japan. Even yourselves, I would love to have the equivalent of the Salaryman, in paperback, of your own stories, topics you cover. I know, Tim, you're like a musician on the side, and
that's an exaggeration, but it's a shumi. It's a shumi, right?
A shumi.
No, I just, the reason I was attracted to your writing is I love teaching culture through humor and storytelling. I mean, that combination is so powerful, and you can use humor it humanizes all of us, especially if we can all laugh at the same thing, And so that's what I like about I don't know if it's a genre, but your style. So.
Yeah, thank you. That's laugh and learn is always I always had that on my mind, and I always had it. I'm having fun with the culture gap. I'm not making fun.
Right. And it's coming from a place of love, I think.
Yeah, like I love Japan, but God, it drives me crazy here.
Right,
here or there.
Exactly. As long as, but we know you love it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's why it works.
But it goes both ways. I love the U.S., but God, it drives me crazy here and there too.
Exactly. Except Bulgarian culture is perfect. But yeah.
That's the first time I have heard that.
You're the only one qualified to make a comment. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So no, that's the first time I've heard that. And if you talk with any Bulgarian, they'll tell you exactly the same thing that you mentioned about, or you said about Japan and the United States. So
there's a lot of material to be made.
Right.
I'm surprised it wasn't a sitcom. I really, it's just ripe with humor. Gung Ho tried it, but I think something more authentic could have been done.
Well, I'm trying. This is a tangent, and we don't have to get into it. But I made a manga episode, a pure manga, out of the book. A couple of years after I published the first edition of the Salaryman, I made a manga in both languages. And I could never figure out. It was very expensive to make a manga. I found out. The artwork, right, I'm working with a manga artist. I'm storyboarding it. I'm writing the story.
Yeah.
but they have to put pen to paper and draw it and ink it. And that's like, it's like 100,000 yen for 30 pages of manga art.
Okay.
Whereas a book, you're just putting text on paper,
Right.
and making a cover, which is probably a little more expensive, but not nearly as much as artwork for manga. So I could never get over that hump. But that was my first step to trying to sitcomize this salaryman narrative. So I'm not done shopping that manga around. But so if anybody on here is a manga publisher, connected to manga publishers, I'll send you the manga for free and we'll have a conversation. I don't have an agent, so you have to talk to me.
All right, you heard it from here, right from the horse's mouth. All right, excellent.
All right. Okay, well, I have a couple things I'll share about self-publishing in general, more about the trends in 2025. 4 big trends that I've caught on to and found out about. So if you want to put the slides on the screen, I'll go through a couple of those just so everyone can take away a couple of things of what's happening in self-publishing. Here's just an intro, which we already talked about. That's
okay.
That's me in my factory uniform, about 12, 15, in the middle of my salarymanhood. I was in a factory in a rural Kanagawa area for 3 years. I had to wear the uniform every day. It cracked me up. My coworkers, Japanese coworkers, were just like, "You look like a natural salaryman. You don't look American at all anymore."
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
I shed my American manners, my casualness. That was the hardest part, was shedding my American casualness.
Yeah, and you can never get totally rid of it, but you can tone it down, right?
Yeah. It's funny what you say, because it's a thought. When I was back in school, and I have 11-year-old brother. So when I was in elementary school, he graduated from high school, and he had to serve for 2 years. So military service back then was compulsory for boys in Bulgaria. And the saying, went that a boy who didn't go to military service, didn't serve there, didn't know really how to go through life. And I think that here in Japan, you don't need that. You only have to be a salaryman to know how to go through life in Japan.
Yeah, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down.
Yeah.
that old proverb.
You learn to play the game.
I learned a lot. I'm glad I did it now. I learned so much about the culture by doing it. 10 years at 4 different companies. So I bounced around a little. I was a lifetime employee 4 times. I like to joke at 4 different companies in 10 years. But I would never have learned what I did about all these manners that are depicted in the book. And the book is a guidebook on how to become a salaryman. That's the style, or the narrative, chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
Right.
So I cover how to learn how to nap like a Japanese in chapter 1.
Yes. I love that story.
How about the art of sleeping on the train? Was that in your book anywhere?
The art of falling asleep but waking up when my station was announced somehow. That's when I knew I mastered the art of the Tokyo nap. And that I come out victorious at the end of the chapter after taking many lumps along the way.
Right. It's funny. And once again, it's just a kind of meme, but many people, many companies that come to Japan, they say that, well, Japan is so difficult to stay, to continue to be successful, and so on. And while I was working for my previous employer, we would tell such companies and organizations that, it's difficult to be successful here, but once you master it, you can be successful in any other market. And I think that once you master the art of being a salaryman, you can actually be, an excellent employee in Japan, anywhere in Japan, but also anywhere else in the world. So I can see, and your book is really a very good guidebook about how to do that.
Oh, I think I am trained to be an undercover spy in any country and blend in anywhere.
If you can do it in Japan, you can do it
Yeah.
anywhere.
I mean, hard for me to blend in here, obviously, but
Right.
I did it through manners. I did try to make myself invisible as much as I could in these companies sometimes, although I felt very watched.
Yeah.
They wouldn't give me anything to do, yet I was being watched. It was a weird dynamic.
Right.
You know, I got to a point because I was in the US, but I was on a team of 10. They were all Japanese except me, and they needed me. So I did everything with them. It was a startup, right? We went drinking, we went golfing, we were always together. And I got to the point where they forgot sometimes I was the foreigner, and I was like a fly in the wall hearing them bitch about Americans, things they don't like and things they do like, both. But I learned a lot just listening to them, like, oh, they complain about this. Okay, I got to make sure I don't do that. So, I think those of us who have like weaseled our way into their good graces, at least to a degree, that's kind of a compliment that they forget sometimes you're a foreigner, even if it's in a fleeting moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I noticed one thing, and I'm very grateful for all this experience and the learnings I eventually acquired, the lessons, and so on, that I learned to how be empathetic here in Japan. And I'm not saying that we as human beings are not empathetic even before we come to Japan. I mean, there are so many empathetic people all around the world. But here, you master that. You learn it. You know how
You
to
almost have to
You
survive.
almost, yes, but you also, how can I say it? It's very intentional as well for people who didn't grow up in this culture. So you need to be intentional about learning it and, actually knowing what to do. So it's really a fascinating thing. And I believe that also you talk about, even though indirectly you talk about this in the Salaryman as well. I love the story about your son getting wet, in Disneyland, and how the issue was resolved in within 2 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Right? So
Every time we go back to Disneyland, I still point out that fountain he fell into to him. I say, and when you were 2 years old, you took a nosedive into that fountain. Anyway, it was amazing. Yeah, it was an accident in Disneyland. My son fell into the Pinocchio fountain in Fantasyland. Yeah. Don't ask me how.
Does he take after you?
No, absolutely. He's clumsy. He's clumsy as heck. Yeah. And it was panic, like, he's sobbing and screaming. And within 2 minutes, like Maya said, this horde of middle-aged Japanese ladies who looked like non-employees, but regular people, like had towels and dried him up. And I'm waiting for my wife to come out, my wife at the time, come out of the bathroom and start freaking out. And before we know it, we're in the first aid room, and he's got like 3 blow dryers on him. And I'm sitting here going like, what is happening? This is like a pit stop in the Indy 500, where they're like the crew.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Oh, it's
amazing. But it's also, story. Yes, it is a wonderful story. And once again, I think that it's a wonderful example of how, the results of empathy, how you put empathy to work for you, working and solving problems, because I don't think that it would have happened back home, right?
No,
I don't see it in the U.S. happening.
Now, the U.S. has the Good Samaritan thing where you will get somebody who just goes so far and beyond your helping you out with something. That'll happen pretty often, but not consistently.
Right. Yeah. The bell curve is wide and flat. When we're good, we're really good.
Yes. Yeah.
When we're bad,
Yeah.
Japan has that tighter bell curve, right? More consistent.
Yeah, you're always going to be made comfortable as a customer.
Yeah.
Not an employee, but as a customer.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and as an employee, your job is to make your customers feel comfortable. So I think that We're back to the story now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have some. Speaking of some of those situations we were just talking about, are depicted later in the senryu poem, illustrated senryu poems I prepared. So
Right.
I'll cover that. I want to give you guys a few just heads up things about self-publishing that are happening. If you are interested in doing your own book from
Yes,
Japan,
please.
if you don't know where to start after this, feel free to ping me. I'm not a paid consultant or anything on this type of thing. Happy to share my thoughts and advice on how to self-publish. Again, just as background, traditional publishing is what you think of, where it's like you have a manuscript, you write a query letter, you submit it to a publisher, you do your research on the market for your book, and you have to have pretty much either a name or a big following to become a traditionally published author.
Yeah.
And you just sort of sit there passively and hope a publisher gets the hook of your book in the market. And if they do decide to grace your book with their business, then they'll edit it, format it, invest all the money in the design and the cover. They do expect you to still help with a lot with marketing, more and more in the last 5-10 years than they used to. That's traditional publishing. Self-publishing is just, you do everything yourself that I just mentioned. You write the book, you start the publishing process, you find freelancers to edit it, format it, do the cover. These are all things I did. You do price promotions, discount deals, you drive reviews, you go on podcasts like this, all yourself, all the marketing. Now the difference is not only those things, but financially, your royalty as an author on traditional publishing is somewhere in the realm of 10-12% of the book's sales value. And the publisher takes the rest of the 90% of the royalty.
Yeah.
Whereas self-publishing, you get up to 70, you keep up to 70% of your own royalties. It depends on, Amazon, you would get 35% in a lot of markets for paperback, and then 70% for ebooks versions of your book. But still, versus 10%, it's just you're talking multipliers more of keeping more of that money in your pocket. So it's, once you get over the hump of how to do it, and you have a somewhat of a platform to just social media following, LinkedIn following, you're pretty much better off going the self-publishing route. And more people are using self-publishing and driving success there, and then they attract the attention of a traditional publisher.
Yeah. So I have a question, Mike.
Yeah.
In your case, because you've been doing this for a while, so you're good at the process. So let's say your book's written. Okay. From the start of the publishing process to actually publishing, for you, what's generally that timeline? Like how long?
Since I work full time, I'm a salaryman.
Gotcha.
Still, I'm slower than the most of the aggressive professional self-published authors. I mean, it could take me up to 9 months.
Okay. That's good. Good to know.
But my books are heavily illustrated. So
yeah, that makes it harder, right?
That's slower than the romance novel.
Gotcha.
The romance novelist who dominates self-publishing these days, fantasy novels. That's just, they can churn those out start to finish of their process. Some of them do a book every 3 months. Wow. So it's it depends on the genre and the type of book and how much.
I couldn't do a romance novel, maybe a parody of one, but I don't think I could do a romance. Yeah. That's interesting.
I don't need to cover too much here. Just there's more of a blurring of traditional versus self-publishing now. Some of the people call this hybrid publishing, where the traditional publisher will say, okay, we'll do some of this, we'll invest in the cover and the editing, and you do most of the marketing, and we'll give you 25% of the royalties or 50% of the royalties. Actually, the second version of my salaryman book, which just was published last month with new stories and new illustrations, that one I used a hybrid publisher in the US instead of self-publishing it, because I wanted a proper edit done And I had never really spent the money to get a real editor to look at this and clean it up. So I went the hybrid route. And we're splitting royalties rather than the 10% that you usually get from a traditional publisher. So there's a lot of ways to approach it, and the lines are being blurred more and more.
Gotcha.
Digital formats for reading there's so many new things coming and going as far as how to consume a ebook. You can buy simply a Kindle ebook like you always have been able to do, or Kobo, Apple, Google Play. They all have ebook platforms, but more and more you're seeing these I guess the terminology is serialized or episodic. Like think of a Netflix series, right? You watch one after another, and that's the way these episodic digital platforms work. Kindle Vella was the biggest, and they came and went. They went away last year, but they were Amazon was trying this thing out where authors like me could sell the Salaryman, for example, chapter by chapter.
Oh, interesting.
I'd write them one at a time and sell them
one a week. Yeah, like one a week.
Yeah, that was the formula a lot of people used. Was like release at least one a week.
Gotcha.
And you pay like $1 per chapter or something.
Yeah.
And you get these tokens to buy the chapters, and it was really clumsy with these tokens and what's a token worth? It didn't take off. But it was very intriguing because it is interesting as a reader to test something out. Inkit is the latest flavor of the month in the US. They have a platform just like Vella where you buy. Actually, everything is in there. Authors upload their books for free, and they get all this data on reader engagement with their stories, like how many people drop off after this chapter, or how many people are like, where do they start in the book? Are they skipping ahead? Are they skipping chapters? Which character are they more interested in? They have all these ways to track what's engaging about your story. So it's really, those concepts are growing more and more, and you're going to see this kind of thing. And in Japan, it's starting to. Manga, I know of a couple startups that are doing this with manga, just like Inkit, where you can buy it chapter by chapter, test it out, or test it for free for a first 2 chapters, and then you unlock the rest of the episodes. So this is really growing, and you'll continue to see that. One of the other big trends, and I've been thinking about this for a while, is doing an audiobook version of my Salaryman book. I couldn't get over the cost of it. It costs $5,000-$6,000 to make a professionally narrated audiobook. Wow. That's hiring the voice, the talent, and having the mic and the software, but mostly the voice talent that's the money. And so that's why it was so hard for the self-published author to jump into audiobooks traditionally. Most audiobooks are not self-published because of this investment. Whereas most books on the market are self-published as far as quantity. So there was a real gap there. It was like, why aren't more self-published authors doing audiobooks? And the reason was because of the investment. AI is changing that, and now there's several platforms that are allowing you to choose a voice to narrate your book, and it sounds, it doesn't sound like a robot. It sounds like you can choose.
I have yet to hear that, so that's interesting.
You can choose British accent, middle-aged man to narrate my book, or California dude with a surfer accent. And there's all these different profiles of AI voices you can choose to narrate your book.
California dude with a surfer.
Right.
So is there a Chicago Ben? Is there
Chicago Ben.
Yeah, we can say our A's flat.
I could do that myself.
I can't.
It's my hometown. I would easily.
That's how I am too.
I should own that.
I do appreciate the development of all those voices and the AI and everything, but I still believe that authors who are able to narrate their own books as own audiobooks will probably be very successful, because
depends on your voice.
Of course, depends on your voice and depends on how good your narration is. Of course, I agree on that. But
In
at the
some
same time,
cases.
yes, but as a reader, I would love to hear the voice of the author. Because when you hear the voice coming from the person who wrote the book,
Real.
yes, it feels much real. It feels much closer, actually.
Yeah, this is absolutely true for memoirs or self-pub books where you're writing your
Hmm.
nonfiction about something about your life. Yeah, coming from you is the right choice. The problem is it takes a lot of time to
Right.
narrate your own
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, that's
And
your time, but you're not hiring someone. But you know,
it
I
is
wonder
tough.
though if you read it yourself, could you have AI mimic your voice?
That's exactly what I was about to say. The last company I was at, Rakuten, I was in their AI, conversational AI team, and we were looking into this, the text to speech
Hmm.
technologies
Yeah,
and training voices, training AI on a human voice so that it can sound like my father, for example, and his autobiography. I'm trying to get him to make an audiobook version. I want to train the AI on his voice give it enough data samples of my father's voice and see if it can do a decent job of
do it. Yeah,
doing it. It's not quite there yet, is what I found. It was not. I
yeah,
tried some technologies that we had and then tried some off the shelf stuff on the market and had my dad. It was pretty funny.
yeah,
My dad hates computers. So
yeah,
having him try to talk to a computer to mimic him
yeah,
was entertaining to watch and
yeah.
listen to.
So we got to quickly go to a message for our sponsor, but to that point, maybe we can come back to it. I'm wondering if AI can at least you narrate it yourself, but then they compress your voice and it does some touch ups to give you more of a professional tone in your in the way you speak, to make you sound maybe a little bit higher quality. But just I thought maybe AI could be used in that way as well, but
Ah,
maybe not. It's a little off topic, but Maya, I know you got to get to our sponsor, so I wanted to.
Please, yes, give me those 30 seconds to say thank you to Houze. You can find Houze online again at www.houze.co.jp, and you can connect with them via email. You can also find the description, well, the contact details of Hana Uroshizawa Howell, who represents the company, in the description of the video on YouTube. So if you have any projects or idea in the field of custom home design and construction or commercial building construction, please reach out to Hannah. You can also reach out to James and talk with them. You can talk with them either in English or in Japanese, so the language barrier is not going to be an issue there. So many thanks to Houze for being a sponsor here, and once again, we are really, really privileged to be allowed to represent you here. Thanks a lot for that. Well, now let's go back to the topic and
Go ahead. We sidetracked you. Let's get back on
yeah.
topic.
sorry for saying that.
Just to put a pin on the AI narrated. One of the big benefits of it is you can easily go back and make a change. If like some fact changes in your book, if you professionally have it narrated or do it yourself, it's very difficult to change it later. Once it's in the
Gotcha.
can, it's in the
Gotcha.
can. So that's another big benefit of it.
Oh, interesting.
You can
Yeah,
always
yeah.
go back and
Not
change something you catch that's wrong in your book.
Mhm.
Last thing, actually, this is AI related as well. There's so many new tools now that allow you to like outline your book automatically or improve the way you write. This top one, like to make a book description on your Amazon book page, there's tricks to making it pop out and grab the attention of readers, shoppers. And there's free tools that take your book description and use AI, which has been trained on the best sellers and their book descriptions, and turns your book description into something better. That's a blessing, those kinds of tools. Another one called Pseudo-Write, which is a tool created by self-published authors that will take like your first attempt at describing like some scene in your novel and turn it into something more descriptive and just better. It's pretty amazing as
Yeah.
a brainstorming tool, not not to replace your voice, but it just,
and then you go back and tweak that, for example.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think that's a valid way to do it.
It's the
I agree.
writer's block. It's the writer's block tool of choice.
Yeah. You learn too. And like, oh, I didn't think of that, So, interesting.
Yeah. I haven't really used it too much because pseudo-write is made more for novelists than nonfiction.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to use it yet. But if you're into nonfiction writing or into fiction writing, I should say, it's a great tool to look at. Pseudo-write. All right. Okay. So this is the second half of what I wanted to get some interaction with all of you, because I know you all have stories about living in Japan, and we talked about the fun of to be had with the culture gap between West and East. This new book I'm working on called Salarymanhood is a spinoff, obviously, of the Salaryman book. It's a joke book, illustrated jokes, 50 illustrated senryu style jokes in both English and Japanese. And I used the same manga artist as I used for my book to illustrate them. And the Japanese version of my original English senryu poem is done by a Japanese stand-up comedian named Meishida.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah, he's a funny guy who used to be a salaryman, I should note.
He's on YouTube. I've watched a few of those. Yeah, he's pretty funny.
He's funny. He gets off into some pretty R-rated stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
but
he does. He does.
He used to be a salaryman though, and so we became friends. And I go to his stand-up sometimes. And anyway, he brought a sensibility, and I'd love to get your guys' feedback on how he translated my American humor. So I'll show you in a couple here. This is sort of my favorite all-time, some of my favorite all-time Japanese senryu from salarymen that I've seen over the years. Like, I've been a fan of this very niche genre, salaryman senryu, which have been published by Dai-ichi Life Insurance every year. They have a contest asking salarymen and ladies working in corporate to send their senryu. It's for Japanese people, so these are translated. But this was during COVID, and it was just hilarious. Commute once a week, completely out of breath. I'm so out of shape. Like all these funny, these cries for help is what I call them.
Humorous cries for help. Yeah.
So this senryu makes me remember one of my previous colleagues. Who used to say something of the sort, not in a senryu format, of course, but that was indeed a cry for help on his.
Yeah, the pajamas. Yeah. That's me today. I'm wearing pajamas on my lower body.
All right. It's a look into the life. That was very COVID-esque, but there's more traditional. I mean, just type it into your Google search, salaryman senryu, and you'll find a lot of them. And you can just go to the Dai-ichi Life Insurance website and you want to read the original Japanese. It's so funny. They cover everything from workplace humor to family humor, and then just society. Yeah. So I studied this. Took an academic approach at first to like,
break it down.
This is deep. The Japanese don't fool around. They when they go in on something, they go all the way. Yeah. And senryu is a serious but humorous part of their culture. So I'm taking the idea now and turning it into a foreign salaryman senryu.
Gotcha.
With this
book.
New
genre, if you will.
Trying to. So this is one. It'll be the book is going to be designed, to make it look nice in a paperback format, but it's going to have an illustration like this situation where I was in the office fooling around with the fax machine, which was still around.
Yeah, right.
Of course, yes.
And here was my VP of technology boss sitting there at his Hombucho desk with a Hanko name stamp.
No computer.
And we're supposedly, here's the senryu is domestic tech firm. Their suppliers must send bids via fax machine.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
Japan is the
Yeah.
only modern country
Yeah.
I can think of
fax machine.
still using we required that we wouldn't accept bids by email.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It had to be fax machine.
Yeah. They're like Maya. They like the feel of the page of the fax.
Very much
paper.
so, yes.
The
I still use
concreteness of it all, the analog nature of it all.
the analog nature, yes. I still use paper calendars though for scheduling and so on. So yes, very much so. I guess I have lived in Japan long enough, to
They
be like,
brainwashed you.
yes.
So the translation is different, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
shorter, like it's DX, which I didn't know the Japanese terminology. DX means digital, transformation.
Yes.
It's a big term, supposedly, that Japan went through
Yes.
in the lost decades. But the invoice is still sent via fax. So it was
You're
like,
right. Yes.
No, but it's still well done. Yeah, that is well
Mm-hmm.
done. Yeah. He transcreated it. Transcreation.
yeah,
Yes.
his take was, it's more direct translated than some of my other poems. This one is more of a direct translation of the joke, for sure.
Yeah. Fuck this.
This actually happened to me, and we were working with Apple as one of our suppliers, and we required them to fax a quote, and they just told us to F off. And it was like fax machine. We were asking Apple to send a bid via fax machine. That was pretty funny.
They had to go out
Yeah.
and buy a fax machine to do it.
Mm.
Like they are responsible for probably one of the handful of companies for making the fax machine obsolete. It was just hilarious.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's so funny.
Okay, number 2. I think a lot of people have related to this. As the lone foreigner, fancy title, but used as free English teacher.
Yep.
That's me giving a presentation, really feeling proud of myself with my fancy pie charts to my Japanese colleague, two of whom are napping
Mm-hmm.
while I'm talking. And then the third is dreaming of me as his English teacher.
Yeah.
He's like, care less what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's just wants me as his English teacher. So do you understand? Yes.
Yeah. Yep. That's happened.
Yeah. I love that expression. I have heard it so many times. Do you understand? Do you understand? It's always like the question to confirm that you have gotten the message because the conversation is in English.
Yeah.
It's I think his translation is pretty much it's not taking the one of the tricks of senryu, good ones I've studied, is they flip something over, like they make something ironic. So I start with fancy title and then but used as free English teacher. And the Japanese translation doesn't do that flipping, that sort of dramatic flip of fancy title to English teacher. It just sort of states, my job within the company is I'm an English
It's almost
helper.
understated, almost like they.
Yes.
And that's where the funniness is. That's why it's fun.
We have a comment about this actually on YouTube from James.
Hey, James, welcome.
Welcome and thank you for watching. The hilarious English translation reminds me of a common prosdokian format where the last sentence completely changes the meaning of the first part.
There's James using big words we don't understand. Thank you, James.
Yeah, I love the idea of critiquing and interpreting how a Japanese would take an English, a
Mhm.
Western or American sense of humor
Yeah.
and make it relatable using little, I think the Japanese translations he uses a lot in his humor, Meishida, is they use wordplay
Yeah.
a lot
right.
a lot
A
more
lot of
than
puns. Yeah.
than sarcasm or irony,
Yeah.
like the English uses. So
Yeah.
it's just a different sensibility.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sarcasm's dangerous. Sarcasm is only allowed against your own children or your own people.
Your own
you know.
family members.
Uchi no Ojo-sama. When somebody says that, they're being sarcastic about their daughter, right? But outside of that self-effacing use of it,
Mm,
then it becomes mean. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
yeah.
that's the tough one. Sarcasm. Yeah.
I actually did, as this is true, I was used as a free English teacher a lot of the times in these companies, and I tried to have accept it and have fun with it and turn it into my own entertainment as much as I could. So
Right.
I'd teach them dirty jokes or bad words or how to use the F word as an adjective or a noun or all these different things, and like how to use sarcasm. And
Right.
I would test them. So I would take them to California on business trips, my Japanese colleagues. And if we were late for a meeting one time, we couldn't find a parking spot and my colleague's driving, I'd test him. I'd say, use sarcasm. And he'd go, oh, that's just great. That's just great. There's no effing parking spot. And I'm like, good job, Tanaka-san. You got it. Like that's
Yeah.
A plus on the use of sarcasm there and the F
Yeah.
word.
Well, and we've got another example here.
Oh, that's James, that made me
Yes,
laugh out loud.
it's so
That is
funny. Thanks for sharing it. So, James writes, my favorite paraprosdokian goes something like this. I want to die peacefully in my sleep, like my grandfather, not screaming and yelling like the people in his car.
Yes.
so dark. I love it. Oh my God, that's so funny. I
That's
love that.
good.
Yeah, I think, back home we had a joke which is which falls in this category. It is like, okay, all people die, and it's oh no, like what was that? All smokers die, but non-smokers die in good health.
Yeah.
Said what's that? What's that? Oh, I don't remember this. But anyway, this is a text printed on a cigarette box, sold to the general public.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah,
Humor. Oh, that's
yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I don't know. That's dark. Yeah, but
Dark
maybe-
humor works.
yeah, all people die, but non-smokers die in good health, or something like that.
Yeah, it's they have a tough time coming up with good advertising slogans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for that. Yeah. Deflect it.
Okay, here's another one. This is when I was in that factory job in rural Kanagawa. We moved out there from that very nice Tokyo location to this really inconvenient location, all because the president liked the view of Mount Fuji from his office.
Mm.
So
Priorities.
office location picked for view of Mount Fuji from the president's desk. Like he could care less that everyone hated the new office location and wanted their Tokyo office back, which was much closer to their home. And it said so many things. It just shows you the complete control that a shacho or high level Japanese executive has over his organization compared to the US. Like the US, they would never get away with that. Like you could never get away with moving an office just for somebody's ego. Like it blew my mind that this guy had power to do that.
Yeah, it's true. I also remember at my previous workplace, so the chairman of the organization, so that was the highest position in the organization, actually had a whole office with a massage room set up for him at one of the events we organized offsite. And it's a huge event, of course. It is held once a year. But he had, his office set up there with the massage, complete with the massage room, and also complete with a massagist who had to be there with her toddler. And so there was also a playroom for the toddler. So that's what you call power, right?
Yeah, it is. Unchecked power for sure happens. It's very top down. This is traditional companies. I think, more modern companies, it's not like this, of course, in Japan.
It's authority. Authority.
Especially manufacturing, because it worked for them for so long, right? Like, it's hard to break the habit.
Top down, I agree. Like, policy is top down, but there's a lot of action that's bubbles from the bottom. That's why people put on the misnomer that they believe in bottom-up management. It's not really that clean cut. It's a little of both. Top down, here's the vision, you're going to do it. Bottom up, okay, maybe it's impossible, but here's what we're going to do to try, That's kind of how it works. But you're right. I believe, though, believe it or not, I've worked for American companies. I think American companies are actually in some ways more autocratic. It's more top down because the boss has a lot of power. He can do stuff without buy-in from people under him, and so it's nuanced, but I agree, like that whole, like, the policy, it's crushing from the top and puts pressure on the bottom, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends if a company is public or not, or has, if the guy is the founder and has complete control of the company. Yeah, in the U.S. they would.
I've worked for Japanese dictators. I've definitely worked for them, but
the flavor of the dictatorship is just as hard in either country to take. All right, maybe we have time for one more. I think, Tim, you would definitely have experienced this. So in the U.S. with boss, he tips 10% at meals. The waiters glare at me. This is where I don't know. I found out the root of the problem. There has been an education in Japan forever in guidebooks or somewhere else that says 10% is all you need to tip in the US at restaurants. And I'm like, I asked my colleagues, where did you read that? That's ridiculous. Like, it's 20%. And that's the normal tipping. And if you tip 10%, you are going to get glares and attitude. And I had to take all of that abuse because the waiters held me responsible.
Yeah. I used to, I was in the US, and so I would advise, I'd say, no. In this situation, you should tip. And, back then it was out in the country, it was 15%, but in the city it was 20%. And I would just say, no, this is the local custom. I wouldn't let them get away with it. I was kind of bold.
Yeah, they have a reputation.
You're right. They would try. Most of the time, they didn't know.
Oh, it's innocent for sure. And I hate tipping culture. Honestly,
I do too. I agree with you. I hate, but that's what it is. I feel sorry for the waiters. They're the victims, not the owners, right? Yeah.
That's just so funny how the reputation of Japanese is cheap tipping.
Yeah.
And so every time a group of Japanese and me would go into a restaurant, I could feel like the waiters rolling their eyes.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Dreading it.
Not only are they knowing they'll get a very small tip, but they know the Japanese are used to barking orders in izakaya, and the staff will just do anything like, give me another moi pai. And like in the US, the average waitress would dump a hot bowl of soup in your lap.
Whoops.
If you yell at her like that.
Yeah. Okay, we have a comment here from Daniel Mags on LinkedIn writing, it's not just the long tenure. Many CEOs in Japan often are guarantors for financial liabilities they would not be overseas, such as bank loans, office leases, etc. Those privileges are part of the compensation for that burden. Right.
I like it.
Yes.
I had heard that before. I had forgotten about it.
Turn that into a senryu.
Yeah, they're carrying heavier responsibilities than we might realize on the
I
surface.
think that's the hardest. I would hate to be a CEO, a Japanese CEO,
Mhm.
even overseas. If there's any successes, it's not good enough. If anything goes bad, it's their fault. Like they feel a burden.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They have a tough
must
job. Like
risk aversion must be. That's why it's part of their.
it's such a burden, man.
It's for survival purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you, David.
here's one more to leave you with. This is more poking fun at myself. Romantic mistake. My Valentine's Day present: funeral flowers.
Oh no.
They're so pretty.
They are pretty, yes. Well,
Yeah.
That's
Buka.
good.
well,
Buka,
I can,
yeah.
like it.
I can partially relate to this because I didn't pick up funeral flowers, and it wasn't the Valentine, but we were going to visit um, a friend of ours, and then on the way to their apartment, I actually picked up flowers which were really huge, a huge, beautiful bouquet that looked to me, as a beautiful bouquet. It turned out that those were flowers which somebody would buy for ikebana, right? Well, it's not a funeral, but anyway, when I took, the flowers to the hostess, and then everybody was like, "What happened? Why?"
Yeah, right.
And that was that, very brief moment when I thought that, oh, something's not right. What happened? Why is this bouquet not the right thing to give, the hostess?
Well, yeah, they should. I was like, I guess I spun it this way. I was like, why didn't the flower shop person correct me? Like, I was looking at roses. Very seriously considering a bunch of roses, and I'm like, oh wait, what are these? I'll have these funeral flowers instead, please.
Yeah,
Like,
nice.
I'm like, didn't they see I was making a mistake?
But in Japan, you don't give roses on Valentine's Day, right? Men do not do anything on
They
Valentine's.
get
They get
the
their
chocolate.
presents. That's the only thing. They get the chocolates. So I don't think that the shop assistant at that flower shop was actually prepared, and probably she didn't even
They didn't
realize that you were
I know.
that you were looking for a bouquet
I
to
know.
give your sweetheart.
I'm joking. I pretty much every time I stub my toe, I do it on my own.
I still give chocolates on Valentine's Day to my in-laws. My mother-in-law. I used to give it to her. I'm just saying, this is American custom. Deal with it, and they were always happy. So I forced my American custom on them, but I let them know I knew I was doing that. So that was just I was being stubborn American. These are great, man. These are hilarious.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Those sketches will be, of course, inked and look a lot better once they're fully inked and drawn. Those are just sketches right now that I'm working to complete the book by the end of March. So if you want to stay updated and know when the book is coming, go to my site and subscribe to my reader list, and I'll be able to let you know.
Michael, may I also ask you something? Many of our listeners and viewers are on LinkedIn as well. So once you're ready with the book, could you please also let everybody on LinkedIn know
on
that?
LinkedIn, no, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll use LinkedIn and of course my email newsletter, and then Twitter and my other
yes
places. Yeah, I'll be announcing that.
And feel free to tag us just to, if it helps expand your network. I don't know how the algorithm works, but if it helps, do that.
Thanks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. I'm very much looking forward to having the book in my hands again and reading it. We all need more humor in our everyday lives. So thanks a lot, Michael. Yes.
Sure.
This was great.
Yeah, very informative. I always learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and to everybody who stayed with us, watched us, thanks a lot for being here today. And if you watch us later, please let us know that you have done so by maybe liking, the post, or subscribing for the channel on YouTube. It's always a pleasure to have you with us and to deliver interesting insights from people who have lived in Japan, worked here, and who know their way around. So, Michael, once again, thanks a lot. And to everybody who is going to continue their day, have a wonderful day. That's midweek. It's cold, so stay warm and enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Thank you,
And then,
James, Daniel. Thank you.
thank you. And a shout out to our sponsors again.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the one.